1 million miles of driving. Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. Good morning. It is a blustery day here in Northern Illinois. It is November 1st. It is 26 degrees Fahrenheit, so that would be, what, 2 or 3 degrees below 0 Celsius. Today's video, I wanted to discuss the 5 things that I've learned driving over 1 million miles. Now, I started driving when I was 16 years old. I'm 48 now. So, I've been driving for quite some time, 32 years, and I've always driven a lot of miles. When I started driving, almost immediately I began delivering pizzas. I would drive to work during the day, deliver pizzas at night. I also owned motorcycles and I'd ride those. I could never seem to get enough driving. If my parents wanted an errand run to the store, I would run the errand, and that was great because typically my mom would give me $10 for gas, and that was back when gas was right about $1 a gallon. So she'd give me $10 for gas. She'd say put it in the car, and then it was kind of understood. In fact, I think she even told me just straight out that if I ran that errand for her, I could do whatever else I wanted in driving around with that extra gas money beyond what the errand required. So I've always driven a lot, and there's a few things that I've learned. Well, I've learned a lot in 1 million miles of driving, but there are 5 things that really jump out at me. One of the main things is that being gentle on a vehicle is incredibly important. So what do I mean by that? Well, I guess anytime you are hard on something, you're going to accelerate wear, but you're also going to use resources. My father always taught me this. I remember when I was a little kid, he always had a stick shift car, and he'd shift into neutral and coast. I'd say, "What are you doing?" He said, "I'm saving gas." And I thought it was nuts. Well, then I started driving and paying for my own gas, and I realized, wow, there's something to that. So I found that when you're easy on equipment, cars in particular, they tend to last a lot longer. So I've always been gentle on cars. Now, that doesn't mean that I don't occasionally drive in a spirited way, especially when I was a teenager. Yeah, I was a little hard on a car, but very quickly, very early on, I learned that being casual on the car makes the engine last longer, the suspension, the brakes, the transmission, you get better gas mileage. It's just best to be easy on the car. So that's one of my overarching philosophies is the way you treat an item is the way it will treat you. My cell phones, tablets, everything that I own, everything technical lasts a very, very long time because I use it within the design parameters that it was intended. So that's important, item number 1. Item number 2, and this is something that I've gotten a lot of flack for in the past. I've always aired my tires up right near the manufacturer's limits of pressure. And I've been doing that pretty much since day one. And here's the interesting thing. I've had people tell me that you're going to get blowouts easily. Nope, I don't get blowouts. I've had people tell me that if you hit a pothole, you're going to get flats more easily. I don't think so. I don't have that experience. And in fact, I think the opposite is true, because if you have less pressure in your tires, it's a greater chance that you will get a pinch flat in the sidewall when you hit a pothole. If you have more pressure, there is less chance of pinching the tire between the rim and the pothole edge. So I actually disagree with that, but what do I know? That's just my take on it. But I live in Northern Illinois with a lot of potholes. I don't have blowouts. I don't have issues. I've had people tell me, well, you're going to accelerate tire wear. That's not true either. I've always gotten far more miles out of my tires than the factory, the mile rating of the tires. So after 1 million miles, I've always done that. I've always aired my tires up right near just a couple pounds low of the manufacturer's limit. And there are, to give you an idea, if you have a tire that has a 50 PSI limit on the sidewall, the tire shop's airing it up to 100 PSI to seat the bead. So it's not like at 51 PSI you're going to blow the tire. That is not the case at all. So And I understand dynamic loading on the tires, I get it. But anyway, I've always aired up just shy of the manufacturer's recommendation. In fact, for an experiment one time, I aired up 6 PSI over. I took a 50 PSI tire to 56 PSI and drove it for 10,000 miles, a full set of tires on my Ford C-Max Hybrid without any problems. Now, eventually I took it back down below 50 PSI because I had proved a point, but that's something I do. I always air up right at the limit of the PSI or right below it. So, item number 3. I know that my channel is all about EVs, but up until recently, within the last few years, EVs really weren't available or not easily available. So a lot of my experience is from gas cars. So item number 3 is with gas cars, you should always gas up. Keep the tank as full as you can. It keeps condensation out of the tank, and it's well, there's a number of issues that you can have if you keep the fuel level low in your tank. So what I would do is I'd fill all the way up. When I get down to about half tank, I'd fill back up again, unless I was driving that car a lot. My work cars, I always filled up and drove it way down near low, and that's only because that was only going to be a day or two before I'd fill it back up again. But if you have a car that you're not driving every single day, it's best to keep more gas in the tank than less. You have less evaporative losses, and you don't get condensation in the tank. Item number 4, always understand what you're going to be doing with the car and plan ahead for your trip. And what do I mean by that? Well, with a gas car, if you know you're going on a trip, make sure it's gassed up. Make sure that you've got the car well maintained, tire pressure is good, you've checked the oil, all that. With an EV, it's more important. I know a lot of people tell me, well, I don't want to have to plan ahead, and I want to just get in my car and leave, and my work calls me in spontaneously, and I can't preheat the car. I get it. But if you have any knowledge of when you're going to go somewhere, always make sure that you plan ahead for it. And I know this may seem obvious, but I'm sorry, the majority of people in my life don't seem to understand this. I don't know how many times I've heard people tell me, oh gosh, yeah, I left for work and didn't realize it and ran out of gas, or didn't charge the car enough, and I drive so much that my work is dependent on my vehicle getting me from point A to point B. So I need to make absolutely sure that I have the car well maintained, but that I also know ahead of time. So for instance, this morning, I knew the weather was going to be in the mid-20s Fahrenheit, very cold, below 0 Celsius. So I got up extra early. I turned the charging on to put a little bit of extra charge into the car because I had it stop at 80% state of charge last night. So I got up this morning about an hour and a half before I needed to leave. I was doing my paperwork. I went on the app, turned charging on to add some more charge to the car, plus that charging heats the battery a bit. I also turned the cabin heat on to 80 degrees to thoroughly warm up the interior of the car, so when I went out, the car would be nice and warm, the battery would have some extra charge, and the battery would be warmed up. So that's important. You don't have to do it, but it is something I've learned over the years. And with a gas car, kind of same thing. If it's the winter time, I'd get up early, start the car, make sure it's going to start and run smoothly. I mean, modern cars are better about this, but I grew up in an era where, my goodness, when I was a kid, there were a couple times my dad got up, I don't want to say middle of the night, but he'd get up real early to make sure the car was going to start because you never knew. Nowadays, that's not so much the issue, but it is a good thing to get up early. I like to check tire pressures if I can, at least walk around the car, make sure that none of the tires are flat, because in ultra cold weather, you can get rim leaks much more easily than in the summer. So I like to just make sure that the car is going to function before I leave, so that I'm not worried 5 minutes before I need to leave that I've got a flat tire or the car won't start or whatever. So I try to have some forethought on this. That I found to be very important. Item number 5, after 1 million miles of driving, I've learned to listen to my intuition. And this is something that takes some time to develop, but you do develop it over an extended period of time. And I think this is where young drivers tend to falter. It's not so much just that young drivers are aggressive, but they're not experienced, and experience grants you sort of an intuition. And what do I mean by that? Well, I've noticed that I can be driving and I think to myself, guy coming at me in the other lane is about to swerve into my lane, you know. And then I kind of get this sense, and I think it's that your brain begins to subconsciously analyze things that you have witnessed in the past. And then I believe your mind, your brain takes that information and begins to make it automatic. So let's say in that scenario I just gave, I've had 2 or 3 times in my life that I wonder, why is that guy kind of, riding the line, or why is he slowing down or whatever, only to have him pull into my lane real quickly. And you notice that consciously a couple times, and then your brain goes, wait a minute, when I see that behavior, that means this is going to happen, so I'm going to automatically notify Matt that, hey, keep an eye on that car, something weird's coming. Or the pavement. I've learned what black ice looks like. I've learned how to innately react. Last night, my wife and I were on an on-ramp. We turned left at a T intersection that was then led onto an on-ramp. As I turned left, it was slick and the back side of the car pitched out. It wasn't going fast, it just was frozen. So the back of the car pitched out, and just my heart didn't skip a beat or anything. I just instinctively turned to the right to counter steer, caught it, and kept on going. My wife was in the right seat and just, bah! She freaked out. And I was just, whoop, counter steered into it just fine. It became an innate just reaction, just a natural reaction. So your intuition, it becomes very, very valuable. I'll notice that in the brush, what is something going on? Oh, it's a deer, going to come out or whatever. You just, over the years, you learn how to avoid accidents. I've come up over the crest of a hill and seen cars backed up, and I think, oh, there's a car the next car behind me is going to come over the hill and could potentially rear end me. And so this has happened to me twice now in my 32 years of driving, where I've come up over a hill and whoa, and had to come to a stop because cars were backed up. And I've backed up, and to give myself some space, turn my wheel to aim for the shoulder and stare in the rearview mirror. And twice now this has happened where a car's come over the crest of that hill, and I've accelerated and gone down the shoulder, only to have that car come over the crest of the hill and rear end the car that was ahead of me, where I would have gotten sandwiched. This has happened to me twice. So, and that's just something that over the years you sort of learn. And I guess, I know I said this was 5. I guess that you can consider this a 6th item, or it's an added component to the whole intuition thing. And that is that I like to make sure that I understand how a vehicle performs and exactly how it's going to behave in a given circumstance. So what do I mean by that? Well, every year, about this time when we start getting snow, I will purposely slide the car occasionally or skid occasionally or whatever to try to get a feel once again for how the car is going to behave, how these particular tires handle cold weather or snow or ice or whatever. And I will purposely, in parking lots where there's no cars, I'll pitch the car and slide it. What that does is it teaches me how to react. It also lets me know, it helps reset my brain to correct my speed or my driving behavior based on the weather that I'm in at that moment, because each car is going to behave differently. So I like to keep myself trained on how that car behaves. And my wife calls it playing. She's like, yes, you must play in the snow. If we get a heavy snow and there's 4 or 5 inches on the road, I'll tell her, I'm going to go take she's got an all-wheel drive Ford Fusion, and you can turn off the traction control in that. If you ever have a chance to drift an all-wheel drive car with the traction control off, take it. It is great fun. And so I'll take her car out, turn off the traction control, again, all-wheel drive, and I'll drift it around in the snow. It is a wonderful skill to have. It's a lot of fun. And I know you have to be careful. I get it. I don't do it around parked cars or whatever, but back roads or parking lots, I'll get it into a nice, controlled, full steering lock drift. And doing that, you get a very good grasp of how vehicles behave. And I go back to, again, if you start to break traction, you don't get that pounding of the heart and that panic. Many accidents occur because people white knuckle the wheel. They go, and they don't know what to do, and they just freeze and they slam into something or run off the road or whatever. But if you understand that, well, sliding is going to happen, and you have a better feel for how the car is going to behave in a slide or whatever, you can much better deal with those types of scenarios. So anyway, there are a lot more items that I've learned over 1,000,000 miles of driving, but I wanted to limit the length of this video for you guys. Maybe I'll do a video number 2 if you want to hear more of the things I've learned over 1,000,000 miles of driving. But I've always driven anywhere from 25 to 60,000 miles a year, depending on the year. And so I wanted to share my experiences with you guys. And hopefully I will, over the next couple decades, have 1,000,000 miles of EV driving under my belt. So anyway, for now, thanks a lot, guys. Go ahead and give me a thumbs up. Like and subscribe if you haven't done so already. I've got a large shipment of screen mount kits being shipped off today. And if you're wondering where you are in the queue, I've got so many orders, it's hard to leaf through and look where every individual is. So I've been getting a lot of emails, where am I at in the queue? And it takes forever to go through that stack. So I can tell you this, that the machinist is delivering a large box of CNC machined screen mount clamp parts. Monday or Tuesday I should have them. And then I actually have 2 people, my wife and a good friend of hers, both sewing the soft sleeves. I've got a stack of them right now, sleeves that are done. And on Monday, my wife and her friend are getting together to work all day making more sleeves. So I think that by the end of next week, I'll have about 60% or maybe 65% of all pending orders filled and shipped. So I will be sending out PayPal balance requests to those whose orders are coming up within a few days in the queue, so that way you can get your balances paid, and I can move forward and ship as soon as I'm ready. So anyway, that's where we're at with the screen mounts. If you want to place an order, by all means, go ahead and do so. I've got a Shopify page, but you can also just PayPal me $50. I'll put my email address as a link in the description below, and I will put you on the list. The adjustable screen mounts are $275 plus shipping. I take a $50 deposit that applies toward the total. So not trying to sell them, it's just every video I put out, I get a bunch of people asking, how did you remount that screen? And so I wanted to let you guys know. So anyway, thanks a lot, guys. Have yourselves a wonderful day. And yeah, not sure if it's going to be a heavy winter or not, but I've got a number of cool videos planned for this car and our little smart electric drive. Some cool winter videos. So keep your eyes out for that. Thanks a lot, guys. Have a great day. Bye-bye now.